I think that's one of the greatest challenges that a professional screenwriter has, and one I wasn't, I think, emotionally prepared for. It is a life in many respects of constant heartbreak.
Jake Thornton is a Hollywood screenwriter, and he's worked on and sold scripts to some of the biggest names, including Columbia, UCP, Amazon, Warner Brothers, Sony, and the CW. Before becoming a writer, Jake trained as an actor, performing with the Royal Shakespeare Company and in London's West End. He moved to Los Angeles and began writing with a friend when they discovered they had a shared passion for genre movies. Their first script together, Winter's Night, sold for a staggering sum that you will not believe. Since then, Jake has built a reputation for crafting compelling original stories and adapting novels, comics, and video games. Most recently, he's been developing Final Fantasy for Sony with his writing partner. How does an actor's perspective shape a screenwriter's work, and what lessons can actors learn from someone who's written for some of Hollywood's biggest players? Let's dive in and find out.
And Hollywood's like that. I was working at the Apple store and I was driving to Uber, and then I was writing on my days off. So it was like hustle, hustle, hustle hard, and then dream come true.
Hello, Jake. How you doing?
Super well. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you on here, man.
Absolutely.
So you recently told me that you were looking to get back more on the acting horse. Why was that?
Oh, it's been interesting. Yeah, I've probably taken about 12 years away, 13 years away. I had a few very big things kind of almost happen in LA. Remember, Darren, when Yellow Submarine was casting?
When they were making the movie about the Beatles, yes.
When they were going to be doing
and all the Brits were going up for it. I went up for John Lennon.
I didn't know that. I had 7 callbacks for Ringo.
7. I could see. I remember you learning drums as well.
You can't see it right now. Recently, I went out and bought a drum kit because I did learn to play drums for Ringo, and I fell in love with drumming, and now it's my kind of go-to kind of 10-out thing I do. But yeah, so anyway, point being, I got very close to a couple of big things and didn't get them, and kind of had the heartbreak that goes along with that. I also then started to have success as a screenwriter, and I kind of put that aside for a little bit.
Wait, let's back up a second. Like when you say success as a screenwriter, you, if I remember rightly, sold the largest spec sale of the year, right? For something like $1.4 million, was it?
I think it sold for one. It sold for a nice $1 million, which was amazing. And then
because you missed that, we were talking $1 million. That was your
$1 million. Yeah,
that was your first script sale.
That was my first script sale.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
Spec.
Yeah. Wow. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that, because that's wild. It's also that story that, I know I tell that story to people all the time as one of those things of it can happen. Yeah. It can happen.
Yeah.
So good on you, man, for that.
And Hollywood's like that. I mean, literally in the year before I was doing that, we just had our first kid, me and my wife, Siri. I was working at the Apple store and I was driving to Uber, and then I was writing on my days off. So it was like hustle, hustle, hustle hard. And then dream come true, life-changing moment. But the funny thing was that because you don't get paid immediately, they kind of go in 3 to 4 months back and forth with business affairs. And so I still had to work at Apple while I was, I've done this thing. Yeah. I was like, I just sold my script for $1 million. And people were like, so why are you still here? I'm like, yeah, it's all been
got to pay the rent.
But anyway, so yes, coming back to what I was talking about. That's really been the focus really of my career, because it's just been the way I've been earning money, and I love it. I love the creative output I get through writing. And recently I just kind of had that itch to kind of start doing a little bit of acting again. It was really became prevalent when I saw you recently in Vancouver, Washington, where you were visiting, and I just kind of want to see if I can get back into it. I don't know what that looks like yet, because fundamentally, I think I'm a theatre actor. That's where I come from in the UK. Although I write for film and I do like film, I think I love theatre. So Portland's my closest city. It's 20 minutes away from me. So there's a part of me that really wants to kind of start to dip my toes back in, but maybe I'll start doing a few little theatre things here and there, and then maybe move into some other things.
Do you think the muscle is similar for an actor that likes stage and someone that likes writing, or a good writer makes a good actor, and vice versa?
Do I think a good actor makes a good writer? I think acting really helps writing, because I think fundamentally the aspects of telling story are the same. And, each scene is a story. Each scene fits as part of a play, a larger story. And I think kind of getting used to playing those small moments, those small beats, really gives you a kind of innate understanding of how to build up larger story from the other side of things. I think it helps you understand character. I think it helps you understand voice. So absolutely, I really look at all the training that I did and all the work that I did as being the kind of underpinning of my work as a writer. And I read my stuff out loud and I do all the voices. So that helps too.
I'm always trying to sort of persuade our membership to, write their own stuff and be part of their own stuff, because I think it's really beneficial for your career to own stuff and have agency over stuff, and not suggesting they sell their first script for $1 million. I don't even know if that happens anymore, but
I don't know if it
good
happened
on
on
you.
first time script, but there was a sale for a script. I think it was, I don't know if it wasn't her first sale, but a screenwriter sold a script last week for $2 million, which was insane. So you do still get these big sales.
Okay.
I just read the Joe Esteras biography, Hollywood Animal, and that was a wild time. It seemed he was talking when he was, the most prolific screenwriter in Hollywood after Basic Instinct. Mm-hmm. He was talking about selling an idea on the back of a napkin for $4 million.
Yeah.
Once he was,
Happened with Shane Black too. There was this period in the early 90s where it was the napkin pitch,
right?
At the bar at Musso and Frank's, writing something on there, sliding it over and going, there you go. Yes, we'll have that.
And it's like those high concept films we talk about, right? It's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely. Yeah. I think that's, and people still want those things. Hollywood is still hungry for those things. I think we're experiencing at the moment perhaps a, question mark over, big IPs. I think Marvel's I think it's doing that. I think Star Wars is absolutely doing that. I don't know what these big franchises are going to continue to do. And so I'm really hoping the studios see that there is benefit in original ideas, little, fun genre pieces. And that's the hope anyway.
For anyone that was not watching but listening, Jake, when he said doing that, he meant sort of like wavering, leveling out.
Wavering, yeah.
There's a lot of content in those big worlds, isn't there? And they're doing a making of Harry Potter at the moment for TV as well, like they did for Lord of the Rings. That's a money
think
decision, isn't
it? Lord of the Rings, they were trying to tell a different story. They were doing a prequel. But with the Harry Potter thing, they're basically going to retell the books again. And I go, okay. But here's the thing. I think maybe the sad thing is that people will watch it and it will probably be immensely successful, but
financially it will be. Yeah,
it will be. I'm certain it will be, but it's also a shame.
Do you feel like as a writer, you shape the way casting happens as well? Because what you're putting out into the world and the stories you're putting will probably have a direct effect on casting. One of the things I'm thinking of is you wrote a female protagonist story where the main female is an absolute badass character. It's called The Princess. Was that a decision you made at writing? And as such, how does it feel like that you're part of that change of bringing different voices to the screen that weren't traditionally they're seen as essentially heroes and things like that?
That's a really good question. I think when, so I wrote The Princess with my longtime collaborator, Ben Lustig. Ben actually came up with that idea right off the bat. He came to me one day and said, hey, I want to do like a Die Hard style story or The Raid, kind of by way of Rapunzel. You have a princess who's locked in the top of a tower and she wakes up, fights off the bad guys, and then fights her way down. And that was like conceptual right off the bat.
I'll watch it.
But totally. It was a super fun idea.
It's good. It's really
good. And so that was exciting because I think we were at a moment in time in, late 2019 where that was still very much what people were looking for. That kind of gung-ho, kick-ass heroine. I think there's been a bit of a kind of pendulum swing back since then. That's interesting to observe as well. I think what Hollywood's looking for at the moment is slightly shifting. But back to your question, though, I think the aspect of being able to shape casting is really interesting. And I think we as writers do have a responsibility to that, to go, hey, that we can, if we want to, shine a light and focus on a particular group. Let's say we want to focus on women, or let's say we want to focus on people of color, or let's say we want to focus on disabled people or Pacific Islanders, or whatever we want to do. 100% we can do that.
And does that come from the studios or from people buying? And are they saying, this is what we want right now? Or is that coming from the writers and the performers, do you think, saying this is what we want to make right now?
I think it's a combination of the two. I think studios will go, we're looking for a movie about blank, or a movie where this particular kind of person is the focus. And occasionally we do hear those things. And then occasionally we go, hey, let's write a story about, like, I've always wanted to explore this, and I always wanted to explore that particular kind of group. So, and then I think from the writing perspective too, you know, like when it comes to basic scene work, I think we absolutely have a great responsibility, because, you know, we can, to a certain degree, kind of cast the movie with the kinds of people that we want on the page.
Well, not just in your mind, but in your description of and your scenarios. Like, I just, you know, something that stood out to me just then was you said, if we want to make a movie that spotlights a disabled community, that if it's about a story of disability, that is very much ingrained in the story and needs to be shown in casting. But in retrospect to that, when I speak to actors that wonder, you know, why there's not these roles for them or those roles for them, it's helpful to understand that it does trickle down from the page.
Yeah, it can. I mean, absolutely. No, say I'm writing a hospital scene, and I describe the doctor as she, and I give her an Asian sounding name, or I say, you know, she wheels her wheelchair out. You know, all of a sudden, like, that's creating something. And whether or not that's, you know, integral to the story, or whether it's just me going, hey, I'd like to be able to cast this kind of person in this role, then that can absolutely happen on the page. And of course, yes, it can, and also, you know, in the best case scenario, should be integral to the story or the scene, the mini moment that we're telling. So, but yes, to the original point, what 100% the writer is kind of playing God in those early stages of casting, if you will.
We have a friend that's a pretty established casting director now, Sophie Holland, and I really love what she does with scripts. Is when she sees a name like that suggests a certain ethnicity or gender, she takes all, not just when she sees that name, but all names. She takes all the names out and calls them character 1, character 2 on the breakdowns. So when agents are submitting, they're not judgmental with the bias, your predetermined bias of what the scriptwriter may have had, the screenwriter may have had in their mind.
Is that a good or a bad thing, though?
It's a good thing for diversity. If you don't want to be swayed,
is it?
I mean, I think it gives a lot of scope to casting to cast different people, and, you know, controversial statement, but the screenwriter's idea is only one idea in a whole team of people of how that story should be told, isn't it?
100%. The kind of counter argument to that, and again, this might have shifted, and it might be still in the process of shifting. I hope it is. But if one doesn't describe a character in those ways and give those characters names, there's the potential for the default for that person to be white.
Right, so confirmation that sort of bias is instilled.
Yeah. So again, I think that's probably shifting, and I really hope it is. But there absolutely was and this is, you know, again, I'm thinking about, you know, 7 or 8 years ago when this was very much a topic of conversation on screenwriting podcasts, for example. You know, should you describe the ethnicity, the gender, the sexuality of all of these characters, or should you just let casting do its thing? And there was the worry that it would be default white. I think probably in the last years it's been shifting.
I think to clarify, it's probably defaulted to whoever's reading it, and it happens that a lot of the studio executives historically have been Caucasian, and therefore that bias has come through from the top. 100. Whereas if it was the other way around, I think it would be a different bias. So it's not a bias to white; it's a bias to who's reading.
Whoever's reading it.
Whoever's laying that next level on, isn't it?
And that's why representation is important, and that's why we've been championing it for 10 years now. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and also though, when you think about those scripts put together in that way, when I read a script as an actor, the richer that the screenwriter can make it for me as an actor, the more I can see the story. If it's too general, if it's too vague, if there is no opinion in it,
absolutely,
it's kind of bland. It's kind of vanilla, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's always a really good reminder, as a screenwriter, to make every single moment as rich and filled with tension and conflict, even if that's small and microscopic. To give the actor really something to play and to, even if it's a character that's in it for one scene,
right?
This interesting,
When I see those characters in my auditions, I do create what I think they are like. I'll make a persona for them because I just want to act more fully in my scene, and I want to visualize everybody in that scene and what they look like and what they sound like. They're not just Bob,
Of course, yeah. Of course, it's a bit more difficult when it's a commercial, but
do you write commercials as well?
I don't. I haven't written commercials, but I've been thinking a lot about story in all of its forms. And I recently read a really interesting book that basically said, commercials are mini movies.
Mini movies, yeah.
And when you watch
commercial directors go on, don't they, to make
movies. When you watch
movies.
A good commercial, you go, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you go, the theme of it might be buy this product, but you can I mean, Darren, I'm sure. I think we can all remember, J.R. Hartley. Like, that's a great.
Fly fishing.
Pages.
Hey, I was hooked on the Nescafe couple.
Oh, absolutely.
I needed to know where that one went. That was like a soap opera, wasn't it?
Like, you think of the great Waitrose commercials that come out or John Lewis commercials that come out every Christmas, that just make you cry, and you go, oh wow, these can be these wholesome little, sometimes 30-second movies. So I think, what can we do? What can one do as an actor to fully inhabit that when it might just be you're not given a lot?
Should actors do commercials? We hear different things from different actors about how they feel about that.
I'm not sure I have an opinion on it. I mean, when I was an actor, I did do commercials. Siri, my wife, did a couple of national spots. I don't think it harmed her career. It's funny, I saw this really random thing that I'd never seen before. It was the commercial for the original Super Nintendo from 1992, and Paul Rudd's in it. And you go, oh my God.
Oh, wow. All right. There you go.
Rudd in 1992. I mean, here's the thing. Commercials pay the bills.
They did. I'm not sure now.
Yeah, maybe they don't so much anymore. I mean, I don't know, but we got through, we lived a whole year of our life off Siri's national Toyota, my wife's called Siri, off her national Toyota commercial, and another year off her Cheerios commercial. So,
amazing.
I did also, 10, 20 years ago, I did also. And that actually helped me be able to do other things, write and put together other projects and do things with my friends and continue being an actor and continue auditioning for other things. And I really worry that the new people now are not going to be able to find that.
But they're finding it in other ways, maybe like UGC
Hopefully.
Content creation, social media. Those things didn't exist when we were solely relying on commercials,
Yeah,
There's just various avenues.
In terms of commercials, just that the pay's gone way down. Is that basically it?
Yeah, I think from ear on the ground, the pay has gone way down because the audiences are diversified. So one commercial doesn't play over 6 main channels for months anymore.
Sure.
There's these little snippets. I think the shift has happened in terms of our attention span. So because we're consuming content all over, people want differentiating experiences from commercials, some on social media, some on that. So you can't get that big commercial anymore, except for maybe those brands like the Progressives that, cereals, exactly. Yeah. And then I think the other part of it is that, the costs and the rising bureaucracy with the unions on it has made more companies want to go non-union with their commercials. That seems to be a trend. And I don't even think it's that they don't want it to be union or they're necessarily paying less or any of that. It's the turnover. It's people are making more of everything.
Sure.
And using it for a shorter amount of time.
Right.
And everything's actually cheaper to produce. So you can do 100 different commercials in a year. And you think about just things like data. Yeah. The way we process data and the way we analyze data these days is way different to 10, 20 years ago, where you maybe had 1 or 2 methods of figuring out if this commercial was good. Nowadays, they can make 100 commercials rather cheaply, test out which ones work, double down on the one that works.
Really interesting.
I think it's all compounding, isn't it? With lots of different things. You know, if there's only 3 channels on TV and everyone's watching Coronation Street and there's an ad spot, well, everyone's going to watch that ad because they can't fast forward it. You know,
right?
It's that audience is actually watching the telly because there's nothing else to watch. It's a different time we're in. You know, they're not on their device. And it's a very different time.
It's the same with the residuals, isn't it? People aren't making the residuals they used to anymore because simply less people are watching the TV shows.
Yeah, absolutely. Or the model has changed for that. You know, when our movie was sold to it showed on Hulu in the States and Disney Plus and Star around the world, but we were essentially kind of bought out of most of our deal. We got a few very insubstantial payment in residuals this year, but it's not like how it used to be. And that's on the
How do you think it's going to change to the future? Are we going to see, we were talking about vertical content the other day, are we going to see more device stuff, or a theatre's still going to be a thing in 10 years' time? How do you write for the future?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, I do still fundamentally believe that people will want to consume stories in some form. However, you know, I have 2 kids, 11 and 9. I struggle to get them to watch a movie. When I do, it's like a big deal. It's partly because we can't all decide what we want to watch, but I'll say, hey, there's a movie on the movie theatre. And unless they really want to see it, they'll just be like, nah, it's fine.
I've only been one time with my 8-year-old and we're not going to go again. It's very difficult.
Do they want to see shorter content, or they're just addicted to the devices, or what?
I think they're addicted.
Definitely not addicted.
I think they're addicted to YouTube. I think they're addicted to short form content. I think they're not. I think they're not. I think, although I'm saying that there will always be a need for stories, I think the struggle that we're going to see moving forward is that there's just going to be less demand for stories, and I think it's a great shame. Let's say I think there'll be less demand for stories that in their current form. I think there will always want to be TV shows. My kids do watch TV shows. They have watched the live action Avatar, for example. They liked. They've watched, kids live action shows. But it's less and less as they get older. Whereas as I was getting older, I was getting more into watching TV, and I was getting more into reading books, and I was getting more into watching movies. For now, I think it's becoming, like I said, it's YouTube content, and it's devices, and it's games. I mean, the amount of hours my youngest son is doing it right now, sadly, is playing Fortnite. That's what they're consuming. But to your original question, how do we plan for the future? Yeah, I mean, they've tried various things in recent times, haven't they? They tried to do what was the name of the studio where it was created by Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Oh, with the vertical.
Oh,
Quibi. And it died.
Was that $1 billion that was down the drain, wasn't it?
Something like that, and people weren't interested. It wasn't what they wanted.
Do you think it was too advanced though? Because now the mobile content, the vertical content is exploding for these short form platforms from China. A lot of actors are making, I speak to a lot of actors in LA, and they're making their living, their regular money from these non-union vertical shorts.
That's interesting.
That are kind of like soap operas, but that's sort of become the new way of almost like the way people have spoken to me about it is almost like how people used to say about commercials. They're like, don't really love it, but hey, it's a paycheck and it's a pretty good paycheck. Mm. And what I've heard is they're paying over the amount of what something like that would have probably paid. Mm. So it's too much money for an actor to turn down. I'm talking a jobbing actor. I'm not talking like a celebrity. Sure. But also it's a money job. People aren't doing it because they passionately believe in it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I haven't explored it personally, although I've thought about doing audio stuff, because again, the audio market I think is really interesting. People love to listen to podcasts. People can do it on their commutes. People can do it when they're working out at the gym. I consume audiobooks voraciously. I just started listening to various audio dramas, which of course have been a thing for years. Radio dramas
plays,
yeah.
for years and years and years and
I
years.
just did one for Netflix called the
Totally.
Seneschal. It's a Zack Snyder companion series to Rebel Moon.
Right, totally. That's great. That's super fun. I'm listening to one right now that my friend Derek Kolstad, who created John Wick, did, called it's all about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's called Strange Case. But and there's is there and there's spaces for those still. And I think that's kind of coming back up again. Again, I think people will always want to watch a movie at some point. They just will, and there'll always be room for shows. But I won't lie and say that I don't think our business is contracting. I think it is, and I think as the younger generation gets older, it's just going to get more.
It's changing, but we've still got theatre, haven't we? And we've still got, even though we've changed to television and to movies, and then to television, and now to short form content and devices, we still have everything. And going to the theatre is a wonderful experience because it's a different experience.
Yeah, I took my kids to see A Christmas Carol last year in Portland, and they loved it.
They love it. Yeah, that interaction especially.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's different.
Well, and that's the thing; those experiences become more rare. One of the counter arguments to the scariness of AI that I've heard, which I actually kind of believe in, is as the more grunt work gets taken over by AI, as the more repetitive productivity tasks get done, there will be more demand for entertainment because people will have more time to entertain themselves, and then there'll be more demand for in-person things and community experiences, because that's the one thing AI can't do, is be right there in front of you live. So live events will get a resurgence. It's a bit like digital art, NFTs, things like that. They haven't replaced real art. If anything, they've made those Picassos more valuable because of the rarity of them.
Yeah, it's an interesting point.
Yeah.
I mean, we enter into this kind of unknown territory still, and people are scared about it. Creatives are scared about it, but I think all we can do, fundamentally, and I do really believe this, that no matter what, people will still want to consume stories. I think it's who we are as a people.
It's human.
It's human. It's absolutely human.
Yep.
And so I do have faith in that.
If you'd like to join the We Audition community, go to weaudition.com/show to get 25% off. Now, back to the show.
Let's go on to some acting advice.
Yes.
Because you are a very talented actor. I remember seeing you, and it was... I'm going to say this, at the time, I was a little sad that you sort of left the business of acting, because I'm like, you're on an upward trajectory and you're good at it. And I'm not sad for you anymore because you smashed it with you. I remember hearing that story and being so happy for you, and also being like, oh, that he didn't need
good decision
to be worried about him for that. But as a screenwriter now, what clues do you leave on the page that an actor can take in their auditions? Because ultimately, at some point, we're going to be auditioning for one of your films and one of your scenes. Can you give any advice to
it's
something inside that script?
I'm going to counter it. I'm going to say, what can the actor do that's unexpected and not on the page? Ooh. What can the actor bring to it and go, oh wow, I never thought of that. I think of years ago, you helped us out, Darren, on the second short film I made, Blood Soldiers.
I did. I think I was a second AD.
I think you were a second AD on that, and I'll always remember that. And a very talented actress called Layla Alizada was in it.
Yes, yeah.
And she's fabulous. She's gone on to have a really wonderful career. And she was auditioning for this very low pay short film about,
werewolf
made out of vampires, vampire super soldiers. It was a fun genre horror little flick. And I don't think Layla knows this, but about 3 people prior to Layla coming into audition, we'd had this amazing actress come in and do the role. And I was like, she's got the part. And Layla came in so full and did stuff that no one else had done. and that wasn't on the page that I'd written on the page. That I just
like what? Can you give us an example?
It's such a long time ago, but it was almost playing against what the scene is in one sense. Although, how can I describe this? It's almost like when you play the opposite emotion to what you're meant to be doing. This wasn't the example, but it's almost like when someone's talking to you and they go, I'm going to fucking hit you in the face right now. You know that person's being serious, even though they're laughing. It's not scary. Yeah. It's none of that. It's almost more dangerous and more scary because someone is playing the opposite thing. Say that again.
I know what you mean.
So that kind of thing, you're going to go, oh, wow, I've seen this done exactly as it's written on the page. And that's the way I see it. And yet when someone goes in and here's the thing, you might swing and you might totally miss, but they'll remember you. You know
how many times we have heard this over and over again in these chats. It's always
great advice.
Do the wild card, go for the bold choice, go against
Absolutely. Because there is the way that it's written, and that's fine, and that's the writer's creation, and that's great. And also when you come in and go, what about this? And you go, whoa, the best advice I feel like I ever had as an actor about auditioning was you're never there to actually get the job. You're just there to stop your headshot getting thrown in the trash. You're just there to go, the casting director goes, you know what? They weren't quite right for this, but I'll keep them in mind for something else in the future.
Showing your age, Jake, when headshots were in drawers in filing cabinets.
I remember those. Oh, black and white.
Back in my day.
You know what? It's an interesting time, though, because in that example you just gave, your headshot would stay on the physical desk.
Mm-hmm.
And that might stay there for months, and someone like, that person. Yeah.
And likewise go in the actual trash.
Yeah. I remember seeing a stack of headshots on the street in Hollywood Boulevard, and I was like, oh, that's such a shame.
But it's the aspect of going, what am I here for? I'm here to make sure that I make an impression on someone. And again, I think one of the ways you can do that, again, it's not to say make a stupid choice, but make a choice that feels emotionally true for that character in that moment, the way you see them. And again, like I said, swing and miss, but at least swing. Don't just come in and do what everyone's expecting. So,
how involved are you ever in the casting process? Sometimes we hear that writers are, just sell their script. Mm-hmm. But are you ever involved in the casting process as a writer?
Well, when it came to, so I've obviously had The Princess, my one movie that's been made. We threw out a lot of names because as we, I just say we, Ben and I, as we were writing that, we of course have people naturally in mind. It's impossible not to. We had a variety of names, and we approached a bunch of those names. However, in the end, this one name was thrown out to us. That name was Joey King, and we went again talking about what we were mentioning earlier. This aspect of playing against type. We were like, Joey King, what, the girl from the Kissing Booth movies on Netflix? She's okay. But then we went, oh, actually, that's really interesting because it's not who you would expect. She isn't built for it. And she was ultimately incredible.
Who threw that name out to you, and why did they tell you? Wouldn't that be someone else's decision?
It was, I believe at the time, it was our producer who was, had flirted with various names, but who went, and of course they have conversations with the agencies all the time. The agencies are obviously trying to push all their various different clients. So in that particular case, I think probably the agent, her agent is actually now my agent as well, Brian Nosakoff, threw this name out to the folks at Original Film, and it was like, oh, that's interesting, And I think if you can do those kinds of things with casting in general, you go, oh wow, I never would have thought that.
And did they ask your approval on that choice, or were they just sort of informing you?
That point. Well, here's the thing. So we hadn't sold it yet. Joey came into that production already attached, and we sold it as a package with the producer and her.
So that does make more of a difference to you then.
Yeah.
If you haven't sold the IP, attaching that talent makes that a stronger project.
If we had really, really wanted to, I suppose we could have fought back against it, but we didn't. It was great. I thought it was wonderful.
She would have kicked your ass, mate, all the way down the stairs.
Exactly right. When we sell a project, we tend to work closely with the producer at that point. We do normally sit down and have a brainstorm about who this person is. We did that on our latest project as well. That's bubbling under the surface at the moment. And the person who's reading it at the moment, this A-list actor, is one of the names that we had on our list very early on because, they were kind of an obvious choice for this. So, but back to the original question, how involved are we in casting? I think when it comes to the kind of main talent, we obviously have suggestions, depending on how closely we are working with the producers. When it comes to other parts, there might be, ideas or tropes of people that we throw out. But ultimately, it does come down to casting generally. Who has that?
So above the line stuff you're generally involved with before it sells.
Yeah. Again, it varies. Your mileage may vary. So yeah.
Now you mentioned just a minute ago that the Princess was your one movie that got made. You've written many movies and you've sold many movies.
Yeah.
Talk to us about how that works. If you sell a movie, what happens to it?
Yeah. So
why haven't you made 10 movies?
Yeah, I wish I had made 10 movies. That'd be great. I'd be.
Well, you've sold them though, haven't you?
I have sold them. Yeah. So I think it's changing. But in the past, it's kind of like doing research and development for a studio. They will buy a bunch of potentially spec scripts. They'd buy pitches, and they would buy them and go, let's develop them. Let's see if we can get them where we want them to be, and let's see if we can get people interested in them. And then if all these stars align, we'll go out and make it and hopefully make a lot of money. And sometimes that doesn't happen for a variety of reasons. There can be regime changes at studios. That's typically what happens. The turnover of staff at studios can be quite high. So the producer you're working with at a studio suddenly isn't there. We had it where the head of our studio that bought 3 of our projects suddenly wasn't there. And it was like, oh, okay. And the person who came in wasn't interested in making any of the movies that had been bought by the old regime. With TV shows, I was attached to produce the Final Fantasy TV series for Sony. And so Sony was going to be the TV studio, but not the distributor on it. So we still had to find a distributor for it. And we took that out in the week of COVID, and everyone went, we don't want to spend money on our big budget TV show right now. So that then died. Sometimes you can write a script and the script just doesn't fit with the people in charge. They just go, this isn't quite what we want. And that can be a shame because, of course, you have one idea, they have a different idea, and you just can't kind of get them to fully, merge, mingle. That's happened with, numerous projects. So again, why don't things sell or why don't things get made?
Various reasons.
The reasons are multitudinous. They really are. So, but again, it's one of these strange things, isn't it? Is that as a screenwriter, I've made a really nice living for the last 10 years. Doing really well.
I remember reading that book, Save the Cat, which I really recommend for any budding screenwriter. But I think in the first paragraph, he said something like, I've sold many movies. You've probably only seen one of them.
Yeah.
Your job as a screenwriter is not to make movies. It's to write movies and sell movies.
It's exactly
something. Right. I'm paraphrasing, but the point was write the movie, sell the movie, write the next movie, sell the movie. Beyond that is out of your control.
And I think it's one of the kind of great sadnesses of being a screenwriter, because you're writing a movie and you can see the movie and you're sat in the theater and you're watching the movie up on the screen as it pours out of you. And to then have that dream kind of die, although you've got a pocket full of cash, is one of these great difficulties of going like, oh yeah, I'm providing for my family, I'm doing well, but why am I doing it? I'm not writing script. They can sit on a hard drive somewhere and never see the light of day. So I think that's one of the greatest challenges that a professional screenwriter has, and one I wasn't, I think, emotionally prepared for. I've dealt with it now, but it is a life in many respects of constant heartbreak.
Yeah.
It's almost like going back to Ringo, getting recall after recall, callback after callback after callback, and then not getting something, but imagining that you're getting paid while that's happening.
Well, I mean, that parallel is very interesting for actors, but there you go. That you weren't getting paid for those auditions, were you?
No, exactly right.
And that just literally falls apart at that juncture.
It does.
Have you ever thought about going into a TV writer's room then? I'm sure you're more than experienced enough if you wanted to work on something that definitely sees the light of day.
Yeah. It's interesting. So have I wanted to? Yes. I'm not. So TV has a very kind of specific hierarchy about the way it works, which is very different for screenwriters. So TV writers, there is a kind of job progression where perhaps you might come into a writer's room as, kind of an assistant. And I'll butcher all these terms. So TV writers, please forgive me. You'll see I haven't worked in a writer's room. You'll start off as like a writer's assistant, and then you'll slowly kind of work your way up the ranks. You'll be like a story editor. And then at some point you'll be a writer, and then you'll make it, so you actually there is a path through to that. In theory, I suppose I could go, hey, I'd like to do this. And I suppose my agent, my manager could really fight for that to happen. But there are other people who are genuinely qualified to do those jobs because they have risen up through the ranks and they understand the very specific way that TV is written, because it is written in a group setting, as you say, in a writer's room. I am far more of a show creator. So Ben and I have created numerous shows, none of which have been made. But like I said, we were about to do Final Fantasy. We were going to do Old Man's War by John Scalzi. We were going to do House of the Scorpion, another great big science fiction book. We've done numerous, pilots, and would be not even the showrunners of those shows, because there are very adept people who are showrunners who have that very specific skill set. So, but in that particular case, I would be present in the room, but I would be present. I'd be kind of almost coming in at the top rather than from kind of underneath, and again, that's the way that happens sometimes, I think, particularly with feature writers. But yeah, so as much as I'd like to do it, I don't think that that's my kind of course trajectory right now, unfortunately.
Yeah. If I'm an actor sitting at home and I've got an idea for a film script and I'm listening to this chat and it sounds like I should get on and write it and finish my script. Richard said, it's all about, creating different avenues for content. We hear that all the time. Talk to us about how do you go from, and of course, not everyone's going to do this, but how do you go from writing that script on Final Draft or whatever program you're using?
Fade in for life.
And selling it over an Oscar weekend with a bidding war between Paramount and Sony. Well, what are the steps in between? Because we mentioned that at the start, but we didn't say how it got there.
Totally. So the process that Ben and I went through, again, it's going, well, it probably won't be that particular script you write, but let's imagine that it is for a moment. Because I think one of the things that happens is you consistently get better with every script that you write. So this wasn't the first script that I'd written. It wasn't the first script I'd written with Ben. I want to say it was the 5th script I'd written with Ben. And it was the 3rd one to actually really go out on sale. So Ben and I had been working at that point for about 6 years together. And we had, during that time, started to show our scripts to professional people in the industry. And one of the things that I always really talk about when it comes to this is there's a lot of hunger in Hollywood and there's a lot of desperation. And people smell that. People smell when you want something. They really do. Particularly if it's, can you help me get this made? I want to get this made. Help me get this made. Help me get this in front of an agent. Help me get this in front of a producer, whatever. I was really lucky. It was one of these moments of where I always think luck is where opportunity meets preparation. So I went for dinner with a couple. The girl was really good friends with my wife, and was a rising star in Hollywood at the time, and was going out with this producer who had made a couple of successful movies. And over dinner, I just said, I don't even know if I'm on the right track with my writing. Would you have a look at something I've written and just let me know if it's anything close to being good? Because I really don't know. And he very graciously said yes, which is amazing, because I did ask someone to read a script and they said yes. He said, send me one script. And so I sent him that one script, and he passed it on to, he said it's very good, passed it on to his junior executive, who brought us into his office and said, I'd like to set you up with a manager. We met with that manager. That manager had sold a big movie, a big spec sale the previous year for $1.5 million. And
that would have been a Snow White, right? And the Huntsman.
That's the Snow White and the Huntsman, exactly right. And so that guy became our first manager, and we started to then write more, and then we managed to get an agent. We were signed by WME, and then we started to get things out into the world. But we had, we then met with numerous producers and wrote more scripts that didn't sell. Then we were dropped by that manager, and then we had to find a new one. It went on this whole big roller coaster, but all the time we're writing. We never stop that. That's the most important thing. I think some, new writers go, I've written this one script, and they get fixated on this one script. They cannot get their mind off this one script, rather than going, let me just put that over here. That's as good as it's going to be for right now. Maybe it's run its course. Let's go and write something else. And every time you write something new, you get better, you get better, you get better, you get better. And then eventually, again, these moments of, we'd had this idea for Winter's Night. Originally it was called Night Before Christmas. K-N-I-G-H.
With a K.
And we had written this script. There was the origin story of Santa Claus. And we met with a producer called Lawrence Gray, who said, I want to pitch you an idea. I want to do the origin story of Santa Claus. And we went, we've written that script. It wasn't where it needed to be. And we did 6 months, 7 months, 8 months of development with him. But eventually he was like, I want to get this out to people. We attached Joachim Ronning and Espen Sandberg, who went on to direct Pirates of the Caribbean movies and Maleficent 2. And
they'd done Kon-Tiki at the time, hadn't they?
Kon-Tiki at the time. Wonderful guys. And they came on to direct, and we took this package out, and it just kind of hit, and it was amazing. And it was at a time when people were buying spec scripts, particularly over at Sony. And it's so, that was 6+ years of my life, going from failure to failure to failure to failure to success, but never letting go of what the goal was.
If I had to summarize that, it sounds like it was an immense amount of hard work mixed with your regular talent that you have. Not regular, but your innate talent. And a combination slightly of relationships. Is that a fair assumption?
And luck.
When those two
all added together.
I mean, I don't know. I was not gonna say luck myself, because to me it was having done the work, and then that magic of a relationship, the dinner, the producer, and those two things combining.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I wouldn't necessarily say that a lot of relationships, they can be seen as lucky, but at the end of the day, you're putting yourself in certain places with certain people, aligning yourself with certain things, however you want to put it in life, where those relationships matter. And I think a lot of actors I know, and writers and creatives, they might so heavily focus on the craft, they don't focus on life at all, and they wonder, well, how do you know that person? How do you, why are these things happening? And it's that people have to know what you do. They have to know about you.
Absolutely.
There's no point in just what you know.
And I think it's not just about them knowing you. I think they have to kind of like you too. I think you have to be, a decent person who works hard. And I think those are the things. And that's where the kind of, and again, I hate the concept of networking. I hate it. Put me in a room.
I'm right there with you.
People I don't know. I hate it. I clam up something horrible. And yet my friends have told me I'm really good at networking. And I go, what are you talking about? Like, I just like connecting with people and making new friends. And then I went, oh, maybe that's just what it is.
That's organic networking.
That's organic networking.
Yeah. The kind of networking you're talking about, if I get an invite for something that calls itself a networking night, I don't go.
Horrible.
And one of the reasons, I think we say this sometimes, Rich, as well, is when networking is on the agenda, it only attracts the people that need stuff, because the people that are in the position to give stuff stay right the hell away.
100%. And that's what I was talking about earlier. You know, I didn't go to that producer going, hey, I need you to make my movie. Just like, I really value your opinion on this. What do you think? You know, and it wasn't anything past that. And it was in a social friend. So it just didn't kind of come into the meeting, come into the dinner going, let me see what I can get. You know, and lots of times I really think it's, how can you be of service to other people in some way? You know, I think particularly in the screenwriting community, it's, you know, how can I be of service to you? So I try and do that a lot with screenwriters, particularly emerging screenwriters. I like to read emerging screenwriters, look at notes and feedback on things. And that just kind of like actually fills me up creatively. And, you know, producers, the way I'm being of service to producers, I'm going, hey, I've written this script. You might like it. Not, hey, can you buy my script? It's like, what are you looking for right now? We're looking for blank. Cool, great. I've got that. You know, people
solving the problem.
I'm solving someone's problem, you know?
And that comes from preparation, doesn't it? And relationships. And so it's just hard work.
Yeah.
Plus relationships. And then you're open to luck coming about and luck finding you to some degree.
You put yourself in a great position to fill that problem. If you've got 20 different scripts, it's likely you might have one that they're looking for.
Here's one I made earlier.
You make an excellent point.
You know, but like, here's the thing. And we know this because we've worked in this industry for a little while now. Hollywood is filled with assholes. They're everywhere. I want to work with people who I know I like. You know, and I want to do that again and again and again and again and again. If I only worked with, I can immediately pluck 3 names out right now from the air and go, if I only worked with those 3 people for the rest of my life in Hollywood, I'd be happy because these people are good people and I enjoy their company. You know?
And that's what commonly gets misclassified as nepotism, isn't it?
I think that's absolutely right. It's very true. Yeah, it's true. But it's, you know, or why the same people work with the same people again and again and again and again.
They trust them. They trust them, and they want to be around them.
Enjoy being with them on set. You've got long days on set. Don't want to be around someone who's an arsehole after 3 hours, or someone who, 11, 12 at night is still bringing their best and being nice to work with. You know,
I have a little story like that. Just in the year before COVID, I did an audition. I was in Austin at the time at the South by Southwest Festival, and I actually did it on re-audition in the toilet of the house that I was in, because that was the only quiet space. And I got a call from my agent that night and said, hey, where are you? Because at the time I was traveling a lot. And I was like, I'm in Austin. He's like, can you get here tomorrow? They loved your tape. They're flying in from Italy. It was an Italian film. And they were here for a day and they want to meet you. You're the number one. And it's for the lead role in this film shot in Italy for, I believe the schedule was like 8 weeks, right? And I went to the meeting. I flew back. I went into my agent's office. We were having the walk and talk up the stairs. They were briefing me. Yeah, these guys are great. They said, by the way, you've got the job. They just want to know that you're not an asshole. And I'm like, and I was like, wait, did somebody tell? Yeah, I was like, oh, this is gone, right? But I was like, what, did somebody tell them an asshole? And he said, no, it's just, they just want to see that you're going to be a good player on the team, right? He said, but this is just a chat. Don't think you have to sell yourself anymore. They love you. They just want to see you be a team player. We went up to that boardroom and there was my team on one side, the lawyer, there was the producer, the writer, everyone, probably 8 people. And we just had a chat. And you know what? We chatted about Italy and we chatted about food and we chatted about life and people we might have in common. And one of the guys have been to England a lot and all these different things. And I would have been playing an American. At no point did they chat about my accent ability or my work or anything. And then the producer stood up at the end and was like, hey, so this is why, we're doing this. He said, I actually quit the business a few years ago. I was like, okay. He said, because I thought I hated making movies. And so I completely quit. I was so tired of Hollywood, so tired of this stuff. And then one of my friends managed to cajole me onto producing this movie. I think it was a Carrie Fisher movie. He said it was shot in Italy. We had such a wonderful time. And I realized I don't hate making movies. I hate making movies with assholes.
Yes, exactly
And
right.
so I'm only going to make movies with people I like from this point going forward. And that's what this was about.
100%.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy.
And actors don't feel like that's part of it sometimes. It's always like the best person wins.
Yeah, it's so part of it. You know, it really is. And again, like from a writer's perspective too, you know, some people think it's only about what's on the page. And of course, what's on the page is important. But again, it's like, do you want to develop a movie with this person? Can this person take notes? Can this person take feedback? Do I want to be sat in a note session with this person or not? You know, and it's all the same thing. This industry in all of its forms is built on relationships. And it's how do you cultivate those relationships? And again, like I always thought I was quite a shy person. And you wouldn't think that. You wouldn't think that. Again, I think I've probably kind of come out of that a little bit now, but I do get in certain situations where I really just go, I don't want to do this. You don't want to be here right now. But if you do think of yourself as a shy person, you know, find ways to get out of that mindset. You know, do your Beyonce Knowles thing and become Sasha Fierce for 10 minutes. You know, my wife has this great saying, which is, you know, can you be brave for 20 seconds? You know, can you just be brave for 20 seconds and go up and talk to someone and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, did it nice to meet you, or whatever it is. You know, what can you do to get out of a shell and allow yourself to connect with someone in a sincere and authentic manner? I think that's really what people are really actually craving. You know?
I was going to say, most of the time, the other person you're going to do that to is probably wondering the same thing and craving the same thing.
100%.
And they do say that the good stuff happens outside of your comfort zone. So that is for a lot of people outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Do you think your writing's going to help with your reformed career as an actor?
I think so. And again, I don't know what my reformed career as an actor will look like at this moment. I don't know even if career is the right word. Perhaps it might just become a hobby. You know, I think there's
nothing wrong with that.
I think there's something about this need to quote unquote get a job to pay the bills versus, oh, I want to get this job because I really want to play this part. You know, I really want to go and explore that. You know, so I don't know in what form it will take, but absolutely, I think exploring story in all its myriad forms is what I want to continue to do. I've taken moves into directing now as well. I've just finished.
I was going to say, you recently in the chair, weren't you, in a movie?
Which was great to be on that side of it again. Again, you just see it from a different perspective. You know, every position you're in the making of a movie, you get a different, you're kind of shown part of this thing. You're an actor, you see this part of it. You're a writer, you see this part of it. You're a director, you see so much more of it. And seeing how all these pieces really fit together and the kind of machinery of it all. And again, I was producing that as well. So again, it's just this kind of, you know, seeing it from this kind of zoomed out perspective. You know, the actor generally comes in, you know, has maybe a day to audition, comes in for, you know, however long they're there for, and that's it. But there's all this prep that goes on to it. You've got the shoot itself, which can be grueling, and then you've got potentially months of post-production, you know. So I'm really, that's probably, if I'm going to go into kind of fully new career territory, I think that's probably the direction I'll head in. But maybe I'll be a Quentin Tarantino and put myself in it somewhere. I was
going to say, did you act in this film as well?
I didn't. No, I didn't. I did not act in it at all. I just completely went, I just want to do just this.
Yeah.
But, you know, I really want to direct a feature in the next year or two, and I'll write myself a little something in that.
Little cameo. Well, we look forward to seeing it, Jake.
We do.
Absolutely.
It's been great having you on the show.
It's been great here. Yeah, to be here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for all of the tips and advice and the, you know, just it's so interesting and nice to see your journey, the way it's panned out.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Congratulations, and really thank you for being on. Lovely to meet you. Lovely to have you on.
You too. Thanks, Richard. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the We Audition show. Your hosts were Darren Darnborough and me, Richard Cambridge, from We Audition, the leading professional actors community where you can connect, learn, elevate your career, and always get a self-tape reader on demand. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're a We Audition member, or even if you're not, we would love it if you could please subscribe to this podcast, as it really helps us. And if you have friends who might get value from this episode, please share the link with them. You can find us at weaudition.com or for your iPhone or iPad by searching We Audition on the App Store. See you next time.